Hello friends, this is Tanya here with Trinity Stamps, and today we're going to do a few things, including making lots of leaves the easy way. I'm pulling out the brand new Autumn Impressions stamp and die set that came out in the Autumn Impressions release, first Trinity Stamps, and I'm taking all of the foliage images or all the leaves and putting them on my mini Misty here, and we're going to stamp them several times. I'm starting out with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and I am going to stamp this one a couple of times with the same ink to get a good solid image. And there is a method to my madness. You can see that all of these leaves are spaced out on the page pretty well, and I did do this without testing it the first time I did it. I was just praying that there would be enough space for me to put all of the dies on at the same time without having to do multiple runs for the same sheet of paper. And it did work out. So I saved that layout by saving the die cut negative. You'll see that later on, as that is part of the trick I use to create lots of leaves the easy way. I'm going to clean this stamp again. I had added some wild honey to that set of images, and we're going to add some crackling campfire, some real leaf changing of the seasons leaves here. This last one we're going to do wild honey and crackling campfire, so I'm going to start with the wild honey, and then I won't have to clean the stamps between these stampings. I can just add the crackling campfire to this image. And now we have 3 sheets to play with. Now I've taken this is the negative that I saved for my first session. And I had originally just taped all of those dies over the images and then die cut my first one and thought, well, what the heck? Why not just lay it right on top of the next sheet? Since they were all stamped in the Misty, they should be all in the same spot. So I just carefully line them back up, and look at all of these sheets of leaves that I have cut out, stamped and cut out. Lots. I have leaves for days. I'll be able to make so many projects at the spur of a moment. It's amazing. Next, I took out one of my favorite things to work with, the gel press. And I'm using those same 3 colors to create some backgrounds. I made about 5, I think it was 5 full sheets and 1/2 sheet of backgrounds when I was playing, but I'm only going to show you this one. I pulled out the Slimline Woodsy background stamp, which is, I believe it's a 4 by 8.5 inch stamp, and I'm adding that to what I have put down on the gel press. Now I had intended to use my brayer to spread that ink out. I forgot. I was in a hurry. I wanted to get this idea down on paper. I don't know if that ever happens to you. And look at that. It looks like a whole bunch of ink pad smooshes right on my gel press. So I go back and I ink blend the same 3 colors on my gel press, and we're going to try this again. I'm going to lay down my sheet of paper. Whoops, excuse me, not going to lay down my sheet of paper. I ink brayered those colors after I smushed the ink pads on the gel press, and then I used the stamp that I haven't cleaned yet, by the way, to add the impression to the gel press, and you could see it on the first one also. And then I'm going to take my paper and lay that on the gel press and give it a good smoothing before I pull it off. And that's what I was actually planning to do. I'm going to do this, use the ink that's on the ink brayer one more time, and I thought about adding the stamp to that, but decided not to. Laid a fresh sheet of paper on there, and now I'm just going to lay the inked stamp on the back of that paper. So we're going to get inking on both sides. And the gel press, as I've mentioned before, is the perfect stamping platform for your stamps. It just takes an impression perfectly. Now I'm going to use the sentiment from the Autumn Impressions stamp set. So we're going to actually use every single stamp in that stamp set and all of the dies in that die set. We're going to stamp it 3 times with the with the Juicy ink from Ink on 3. I did use my anti-static powder tool before I started this so that I could heat emboss this with gold embossing powder. Just going to sprinkle this on. I did off camera stamp it twice so I would have 2 of these greetings since my piece of cardstock is big enough for that. Why waste, right? May as well make 2 while you're making 1. I don't send a whole lot of Thanksgiving cards, but you know what? This year I just might. This is such a fun font and a great size for a sentiment on the front of a card. And I love the way it die cuts with the coordinating die. I could never bubble cut this on my own as well as this die does. And it's so much faster. It does cut it into one piece, but it cuts out the innards between the words in a beautiful fashion. Now I had taken that first gel press printed piece and decided to take my quote-unquote ugly piece to use first, just so it would get used. Sometimes I challenge myself to use my mistakes first. So I had taken that panel and cut it in half, and then I die cut it with the 4.5 by 6.5 inch panel from Modern Embossed A7 dies. And then I took one of the smaller dies and cut out the center because I decided to make a frame. I also took the Modern Embossed edge, let's see, 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 panel and die cut that with white. Added a little extra dimension behind it and added that to a 5 by 7 card base, and now I'm adding that frame to the same, and I have some chipboard behind that. Behind the white mat I had put a couple layers of scrap cardstock. I wanted some dimension but not quite as much as I get if I put a couple layers of chipboard on there, or coaster blank. Now I have this bowl full of leaves in a variety of colors, and I am just going to start adding those inside the frame under the sentiment. Now you could stop at any point. You could do just a couple, you could do 1, you could do like 3, or you can go all out and practically fill in that frame with leaves. I was in a mood to use it all. So I did use one of my favorite positioning tricks, and that is to get it all laid out and then lay a piece of press and seal over the top of it. I actually have a couple pieces of press and seal stuck to my work desk. My work desk is a china hutch that I converted to a standing desk, and it has a mirror in front of me, which also helps with lighting for my videos. And stuck to that are various pieces of washi tape and press and seal and schedules and post-it notes and card ideas. I don't need the mirror for anything but reflecting the light. I then adhered all of those pieces after I used the press and seal to get my positioning correct. And I did take 2 layers of white cardstock and die cut that to put behind the Happy Thanksgiving sentiment, and adhered that with some barely aired precision glue. Now we have 3 colors of rhinestones here, and I did give you a quick look at those. They'll also be linked in the description box below the video here. I'm adhering all of these scattering of gems in the 3 colors. I've got Ruby Radiance and Citrine something, and I think it's called Twinkling Topaz or Amber Glow. Maybe it's Amber Glow, that middle tone. And I've adhered those all over inside of that inside of the frame. Next, I am taking 3 more pieces of leaves, and I'm going to add those to the inside of the card. I am actually really enjoying adding die cut images to the inside of my card. I don't ever have to worry about messing up the whole card. Everything is stamped, and then you just put it exactly where you want. You aren't going to drop your stamp. You're not going to be off center because you can place it the way you want it. And that's card number 1. Card number 2, we're going to take that die cut piece from the center of that frame and we're going to put that in the middle of this card front, which has a piece of, I think this is called soft stone. It's a really light, warm gray color that I die cut again with the modern embossed A7 stack in the 4.5 by 6.5 inch piece. And then I took a bunch of these leaves and put them around the perimeter of that gel pressed pattern paper in the center of the card. I did end up cutting the stems off of them so that they would fit more nicely underneath that. Both the gray panel and the Woodsy background panel have extra dimension behind them. And I'm just using my tweezers because my fingers are clumsy to add these leaves individually around the panel. I do use more of the smaller leaves on this one to add little punches of color and a little filler around the edge. This is kind of like a wreath, but not really. It's more like it's bursting with foliage. I love the wood grain edition with this. And this time I'm pulling out the Beautiful Breeze stamp set. I am just using it for the sentiment because I really like the Autumn Greetings sentiment, both the size, the font, well, I guess the size, the font, and the actual greeting itself. Autumn Greetings sounds like such a great versatile greeting for anything. You could send it just as a hi, you could send it as a birthday card, just about any reason. I'm again going to gold heat emboss this. I love that this is a nice bold sentiment and it heat embosses beautifully. There are coordinating dies for this and it cuts each word individually and it actually cuts it nice and close. I love the detail of those dies. Now to soften up that wood grain panel a little bit, I'm smooshing some of this Shark Tooth White Atelier Ink on 3 ink onto a piece of packaging so that I'm not contaminating my white ink pad. You'll see at the end here how much of the ink from the panel transfers onto this brush that I'm blending onto the panel with. I'm just going to take my microfiber cloth. I sprayed it with a little bit of water. I just have dish soap in my bottle and it cleans up very nicely. Now the ink that's left on that packaging, I'm just going to add a little water and do some spattering on this background because spatter's fun. And why waste the ink? I'm going to clean up my workspace and then I'm going to add these sentiments, which are again 2 or 3 layers of cardstock behind or together. I think it's just 2 layers. Yeah, the layer that has the actual embossing on it, and then I die cut 1 layer of thick cardstock to layer behind that for a little dimension. There is the Topaz Twinkle. I decided to go with just 1 color of rhinestones this time, and I made a trail through the center of the card in various sizes of the rhinestones, using the Bearly Art Precision Glue and the pickup stick to quickly apply these all over the front of the card. I do love this pickup stick for the ease that it gives in picking up these little gems and applying them to the card. Inside the card, I am again going to use some leaves to add some fun to the inside. This time I'm just going to adhere them with the stems hanging off the edge. And I keep playing around with placement. Some of these colors go very well together. Some of them are an almost match and not quite. They aren't perfect. So I swap out that rock and rolled inked branch with a more solid tone. And these just seem to coordinate together a little better. I'm going to trim off the parts that hang off the edge of the card, and I do end up trimming just a couple of the leaves on the front of the card also. So that's both of the cards that I created today, and I could have made so many more. I have so many extra leaves. I will be able to create cards for days with that. And it's really nice to have some of those laying around to work with when you have an inspiration and not a whole lot of time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, now's a great time to do that. And if you're interested in any of the product I used today, they will be linked in the description box below, as always. I appreciate it if you shop with me, and I would love to hear what you have to say. Leave me a comment in the description or in the box below the video. Here are a couple more videos we thought you might enjoy. Until next time, bye-bye.